Good morning everyone, and welcome to the second food vibration session of the week with me, Tara, the Playful Vegan. We're going to keep the theme sweet this week, and I'm going to show you how to make another dessert, but this time a raw dessert. It's the raw mint and ginger tart with kiwi. I absolutely love it. It kind of reminds me of like one of those vegan cheesecakes because it's got cashew, but I found that the ones that I've tasted have just been kind of like, yeah, they're good, but you know, they just got like berries or chocolate. They're pretty standard. I like this one because it's got ginger and kiwi and mint, and it maybe seems like those flavors would sort of be overpowering, but it really isn't that way at all. And you can actually keep it in the freezer as well, so you don't have to feel like pressure to eat it all right away. You can just leave it in the freezer for a while, and you can actually even have it for breakfast. I love it. So I'm just gonna show you the ingredients. So for the base, these are the base ingredients. We're going to have some buckwheat groats. This might seem a little bit weird to you. I don't know if you've cooked buckwheat before just as like a grain for a savory dish and also having it raw, but it's actually kind of like biscuity in a way, and it's deshelled or dehusked buckwheat groats. Well, groats are, by their definition, they're dehusked buckwheat, and it actually gives like a nice crunch to the base without it making it too kind of rich, because I know a lot of these bases normally are just made out of nuts and seeds and maybe dates, so it's just nice to have the buckwheat groats for that crunch. And I actually find this mix for the base really nice, even as a cereal or to add to cereal. And then I've got some organic dates as well. Again, I've spoken about the benefits of dates in the last demo, but if you missed it, they're rich in antioxidants, fiber, and actually calcium as well. And I've got some lovely organic local pecan nuts as well. You can also use walnuts for this recipe. Obviously, pecan nuts also rich in vitamin E, which is great to boost the immune system. And then moving on to cashews, I've soaked these overnight in filtered water. Also more dates, and this recipe actually has, if you make the full amount, 3 cups of dates, which sounds probably like really like too much, but it actually works really well to sweeten and to bind the dish. This is for the filling ingredients, and it's a bit of a hack because there's water in the filling as well as the dried dates, and what I've done is I've just soaked the dates overnight in some water, so that the dates soften and they're easier to blend, and then obviously the water goes into that as well. And then I've got some lovely fresh mint. Mint is also an immune booster, also rich in antioxidants, also really good for digestion, for the gut, and as is ginger as well. Been using ginger quite a lot, I think, the past couple of recipes. And then I've got some beautiful authentic maple syrup. I try and get organic where I can, and some extra virgin organic coconut oil as well, which I'm going to melt for the filling. And then of course kiwi fruit, which it doesn't actually get incorporated into the dish, it's just slices at the top to garnish, but also to give it some more freshness. And of course kiwis are rich in vitamin C as well. Cool, so let's get going. Okay, so I basically just put the buckwheat groats and the pecan nuts in the food processor, and I hope you can see it's just processed it until it becomes basically like a crumb. Like I said, you can eat the buckwheat groats raw, that's totally fine. When I found this recipe, I basically looked it up, and it's totally fine. And like I said, it adds a bit of a crunch. At this point, I'm going to be adding the dates, and that's obviously to bind the base. And I'll show you what it's meant to look like after that. And there you go, the date has been mixed in. I'm really glad that you didn't see that because The food processor was jumping around all over the place like it was possessed. This is also quite an old food processor. It's amazing, I love it, but maybe with a newer one it won't be so hectic. It's basically just because the dates are kind of like chewy and they just need to get broken down, and the food processor tends to jump and it all gets a little bit crazy. Just note that sometimes there is actually, there's not meant to be pips in these packets of dates, but you know, sometimes every now and then there is one. So you just want to check that there isn't a pip like stuck on the edge of the blade, which happened to me once. And the engine was just getting so hot and it was jumping all over the place, but also like a little bit too much and or more than normal, should I say. And I could even smell the engine at one point. So you just want to check that, and you want to process it until it's kind of like a coarse crumb like this. Just note that I'm actually making half the recipe because you know, there's just a couple of people living here, so I just wanted to make half, and even half is actually quite a bit. I'll show you at the end, you'll see whether you want to make half or the full amount. But yeah, so I'm going to press that into this when the filling is done, and I'll show you how to assemble it. But just note that you know, this dish is only for half, and you'd need a bigger dish for the full amount, otherwise the base ends up being too thick. At this point, what I'm going to do is basically just put all the filling ingredients into the jar for the NutriBullet. I actually put in a little bit extra mint and ginger just because I love those. And you want to put softer ingredients closer to the blade just so that it blends more easily and more quickly. If you aren't pre-soaking your dates and you're adding water afterwards, just add little bits at a time until it becomes kind of like a thick sort of paste. I'm also going to melt the coconut oil just before putting it in, and I'm going to blend it all and show you what it looks like at the end. Okay, now we've got everything ready, and you can see that this is kind of, it's like it looks like peppermint crispy type vibes, like browny green color, and it's fairly smooth. I put it in one of those 900 watt NutriBullets, and then of course we've got this lovely coarse crumb that you can also, it's so delicious if you had to just taste this before you put it into the dessert. It's just, yeah, it's like a cereal. You could add milk to this, like some sort of nut milk, or you could just add it in addition to, just add it to your breakfast just to make it more crunchy, give it more texture. So what I like to do is just flatten it down really well, because it's going into the freezer. It's going to end up setting nicely together with the filling on top, but you want to pack it fairly tightly. And I also wanted to say, with the filling, the maple syrup is optional, only because there are actually, like, there's a lot of dates or raisins in the recipe. So you want to pack it quite tightly. I find a glass works well. Just don't become the Hulk and smash the glass into your base. And then you want to take this beautiful filling with that mint and ginger, the creaminess with the sharpness of the mint and the ginger is really good. Really adds depth and character to this. And then you just want to kind of smear it until it's all evenly spread. The base is quite thick actually. And you do have the option of setting this in the fridge or the freezer, but I honestly, from my experience making this, it just works better in the freezer. And I actually like to, once it's set initially and you've had some, I like to put it back in the freezer. And then obviously it'll last longer as well if you need it to, but you might not, because it'll probably go in a flash. And then you have the option of slicing the fresh kiwi, putting the slices on top of the dish and freezing it like that. or putting the fresh slices onto it once it's initially set. And yeah, I'll show you what it looks like at the end. Good morning, everyone. Yes, it is a brand new day and I'm wearing a different top, I know. I decided to actually let this dessert and just let it sit in the freezer overnight because I actually prefer it frozen. You can see it's actually pretty, frozen still, and quite tough actually when it's straight out the freezer to slice. So if you want to slice it up, then maybe just wait like 15 minutes to half an hour just to let it thaw a little bit. But yeah, so here's the dessert. It sets really nicely when it's frozen. You could even try it after a couple of hours in the freezer, but it takes a while and, well, depending on the strength of your freezer, of course. And I prefer it hard. I think it's works best that way. And I actually decided to slice the kiwis and put them on the dessert before freezing after all, because I also like that frozen kiwi on top. It's really nice, and you can also garnish it with mint. And it's quite rich, so you might want to have like little squares at a time. And yeah, that's it. I also wanted to say that I got this dessert from thisrawsomevegan.com if you want to check them out for other recipes. I didn't adapt this one. I think it works pretty well. And I hope you have a beautiful day and weekend. And until next time, I'll see you next Tuesday. Ciao.